strange world with peace and toodles. Well, if it isn't our fellow strangers again.
Traversing the strange world.
Welcome to another episode of Traversing the Strange World with Peace.
And Toodles, that's me.
Today, we have a guest on the show. A long-time teased guest, mentioned it a time or two. Our guest today is Elizabeth
Close.
Wood, intuitive flow tarot reader, and also dream interpreter. Welcome to the show, Elizabeth.
Hello, thank you guys for having me here.
Intuitive flow tarot.
Yeah.
Are there different types?
There are different types of tarot readers. Intuitive flow sort of means that I don't necessarily use traditional spreads. I make up the spreads as I go along. Traditional tarot readers use spreads like the Celtic Cross and stuff like that, if you've ever heard of that. And that's how I learned from traditional readers, but over time I've developed my own intuitive flow. And it's not something necessarily that I've made up. Other people use it too, so it's just a term that's out there for that type of reading.
So what is a spread?
So a spread is usually if you have lots of different types of spreads for different questions or queries that you have. Usually if you have, you want to know what's going to be happening, people believe that tarot can tell you the future. Personally, I don't think that myself. But traditional spreads have a layout. So you put a card here and that's going to tell you this part of that. And so when you use traditional layouts and traditional spreads, you can put the cards down and say, well, this is going to be supposedly happening to you in the next few months. And so because I don't necessarily believe that that's how tarot fully works, and I don't do it that way. I think that tarot is a tool to help you in the now. So when I do tarot readings, a lot of people sort of consider them almost like therapy sessions, which, go to real therapy also, like not saying to go find a, tarot reader and use that as therapy. But a lot of people say like this is like that because it's kind of a delve into what's going on right now, what's in the moment, things that are happening within your life that can, maybe you've been thinking a lot about this or don't know where to go with this, or maybe it's in the back of your mind. And this is kind of a way to help get that out there and give you solutions.
A little Rorschach test.
Maybe in a way. I think that because imagery has a lot to do with parts of it. But if you have different decks, or if you've ever looked at different decks, there's a lot of different imagery in them. Yeah. Symbolism is a lot of it as well. But with the way that I do it, it's kind of, I tell you what the cards tell me, which sounds silly if you've never done it before or had it done or seen it done. And that leaves a lot of questions because, well, how do you know what the cards tell you? Well, they each have their meaning. Mm-hmm. And so I know what they mean. And so from the situation that I'm feeling and, the instincts that I'm having when I put the card down, that's sort of what's going to tell me what's happening in the next thing. You never just put one card down. So you need multiple cards to do it. And so when you're laying multiple cards down, it kind of tells you a story of what's happening and it kind of evolves that way.
If different decks have differing cards in them, would that change what each deck says about somebody? Or do you still end up getting the same message?
Are there
from
certain
different decks?
archetypes that exist on every card? Every version of it?
So, yes and no. You know how there are, so like Aleister Crowley has his own, it's going to be slightly different than the traditional writer. Which is the one that is modeled after almost every people use that one. Or almost everyone's are use the Rider-Waite. And so there are going to be subjects of tarot that are slightly different because they have a different card deck. If they have different, the cards have their meanings, which means each card, as an outline says this is what that means. This is, and all the decks that use that same outline. So if all the Rider-Waite decks, even if the imagery is different, the card still means the same thing. There are decks where my specific deck actually has 2 special cards in it because people who are, write their own decks and make their own will add their own special things to them. And it doesn't take away or add to anyway. If you use this card, you just have to know the meaning of that card and what the artist says that card means. But the rest of the cards still have their meanings. And the way, you'll get different readings from different decks because different people read them that way. But when I read my cards, I read them all the same way, regardless of the imagery, because I know what the card means. And unless there's certain things in here that are telling me that this is more important than that, I won't necessarily mention it or say anything.
Do you mind if I pick up one of the cards?
Sure.
We'll just use that as an example, and I'll ask you what it means. Okay, so lady.
And we have a tarot deck in front of us, in case you may have wondered.
Well, we're doing an episode about tarot cards. Of course we have.
That would
tarot
make
deck
sense
in
to
front.
have some, wouldn't it?
Yes. So the one I picked up, it's a lady in a white dress, kind of in a veto position, red hair. She's holding that's a pentagram, and then there's one at her head, 2 by each foot. What does that card mean?
4 of... Sorry, the lighting in here. Pentacles?
It's all right. They also have pentagrams. Yeah, they're the pentacles.
Pentacles.
So pentacles are also associated with coins or diamonds, if you have ever seen any other decks, because there's, they don't always all just be pentacles. They have different imagery, but they're all the same meaning. So when you get to the 4 of Pentacles, we can look at the imagery and you can say, like, we can go off of what we feel there, because that's part of the tarot card deck, but the card itself is going to have its own meaning. And so when we look at pentacles, those are working things that are in progress now. They're also associated with the earth. It depends on if you believe more also spiritual things, because there's astrology things that are also associated with each card and each meaning. But more so than we've got somebody who's holding on to something that's really not helping them progress in their life. And that's what the 4 of Pentacles here means. And it's kind of like you're holding on to things that, obviously have affecting meaning to you, but they're probably trauma caused and they're not helping you grow forward in your life. So those things, until you're able to let go of those things, you're going to continue feeling and doing
They're
these
like
things.
shackles in a certain sense.
So in a way, yeah. And each card does have its own meaning, like I said. And each card, you can interpret it how everybody will interpret it, their own way. They have a meaning, but doesn't mean that you don't have influences if you believe in certain gods, or if you have a certain way that you like to do things. If you laid in, a spread and the spread's telling you that this part of that, because it might mean that, but that's maybe if you put it in a spread and it's laid in the part where in the future. So in the future, it might come up that you might have to readdress things in the past that hurt you. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It depends on how it's laid out that it can mean what it means. Right. And also the people who read. So like I was saying earlier, I don't have to reiterate because it wasn't on. So my grandmother, who's Catholic, who reads, she uses influences of saints and God.
Interesting.
And
it reminds me of Brittany from the Modern Day Witch. Her grandma was also Catholic, and
where you got that book sitting right there on the
right.
table.
Did candles and crystals. Interesting.
Right. And
Just
she's
goes
very
back to show us that everything kind of is very similar.
We're all just people telling the same story from our own perspectives.
And that's very
We're in
connected,
different pair of
yeah.
glasses. Yeah. Anyway, you were saying. Sorry.
Well, no, you're okay. Just that if you get a reading by me, it's going to be different because I'm a different person than a reading by someone else.
Yes, you're talking about your grandma.
Yeah, so because she uses, those, like she uses like archangel cards and saint cards, and she connects that way. And so your reading will be different because she has different influences, and she prays to someone different, and she believes in something different.
I believe Aleister Crowley, much of his tarot deck did have it had archangels and various Hebrew words, on
right. And if you take from your religions, that makes sense,
Yeah, I believe it was very Kabbalistic. I don't know. Was Aleister? I don't think he wasn't Jewish. I know his parents.
Well, I know he was an
Jewish.
occultist, but if you're not, you can be raised something and not identify that, and so you can take all those marks from that and put it into what you are. So yeah, that makes sense.
Aleister Crowley, I believe it was his parent. He came from a very, very strict form of Christianity. Oh. His dad was like a minister. Maybe it was something along the lines of not Quakers, but it was like a very strict offshoot of Christianity. And, he was born in the 1900s and whatnot.
Wasn't it like 1920 something? Or
So, Christianity, obviously, in its root, if you get to the core of the snowball where it started, it's obviously everything in it comes from, not everything in it, but much of it comes from Hebrew origin, so I could see. I don't know if Aleister Crowley was Jewish or not.
Is occultism a religion also, or just a practice?
I would say no. Personally.
Well, I feel like there's so many things across many cultures that, they have their esoteric side of, like Islam has Sufi, Judaism has the Kabbalah, Christianity has Gnosticism.
The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn has the 33rd degree.
And that all, in a certain sense, by somebody would be considered a cult, And And so that just like paganism, there's
My first church would definitely be considered a cult.
there's the paganism of the Romans, the paganism of the Greeks, the Egyptians. It's all different, but there are these different things like occult, pagan, I believe, are blanket terms to, I think, describe a genre, like not everything in the genre is the same.
I think they're all the same
Style.
sort of, platform or outline, but they all have different outlets to them. So I wouldn't consider them religions, I
Yes.
guess, but some people, like you said, might. So
I have another question about the tarot deck. Do you consider it magical?
I personally think it's a tool. So yes and no, I guess. You give as much magic as you believe in anything. So, I mean, if you are...
Just
Like
intention.
you were hinting earlier, maybe like a psychological tool. Like
yeah, I think so.
a way to like maybe like it's a form of meditation or reflection. Like
I think so in both ways.
because like we're at a certain point, we're going to do a tarot reading, and you're going to have us pick up certain ones that stand out to us. Is that how it works, or
So, no,
how will it go?
do a tarot reading for whoever. And basically what it is I will lay out cards and tell you what the cards tell me about you. And for some people that can be personal.
Do we
so it
pick
can
the
be
cards, or
no, not really.
you pick the cards
I
for
do.
us? Okay, all right.
At random or just what's on the top?
So no, I shuffle until I feel like I've shuffled enough, and then when we're good, we go.
They say 7 shuffles maximizes randomization of a deck of cards.
Well, they say a lot of things.
Well, that's just coming from the magic standpoint. So I do sleight of hand and magic
Right.
tricks, so I'm
So when I shuffle,
familiar with a normal deck.
Trickster.
right? When I shuffle
Indeed.
a tarot deck, I just shuffle until I feel it's good, until I feel it's enough. And it's different per person, so it's never the same. I mean,
Is that a practiced skill to feel it? Like,
I
does
would
it-
say that's the intuitive part, the
does
intuition.
it get easier in time? Like, do you get better at it or more sensitive to it?
I would say yes, but that's with anything. I went to art school, and my art teacher said the only way you get better is by doing. So, and that's with
That's true.
anything.
I kind of want to do a reading on one of us.
The tarot cards started out as a deck for games. It was a storytelling sort of game that
We should
the
start
upper
with the
class
history of
people
it.
would play because poor people couldn't afford cards because they were hand painted and hand done. And so, and it developed. That was when they started. And they developed into what they are now, which is something that everybody uses to tell a story in a way. And it consists of a story about you. And, excuse me. So the things, when people say they're a divination tool and they can tell the future, well, that's something that I don't believe because I don't believe that the future's fixed, per se. I think all of our lives are a path made up of the people who came before us. And as we lay the bricks, it kind of goes as we go. So we have bricks that were laid down by people, far in the past, way ahead of us. We haven't gotten to those bricks yet. But it's kind of, we split off our pathways. So some things might be, more set in stone than others, but it doesn't mean that the circumstances around them can't change. And thus the things will be
could
different.
You repeat that you said about brick pathways built by other people?
So I think a lot of people say everything happens for a reason. And I think that there's a shred of truth to that, but that's not an absolute. Because the things that happen to us are not always necessarily things that we have put into place. There are people who have come before us, people we've never even known who, put into place things that will affect us later in our lives. And so that's why I don't think anything in the future is necessarily fixed because we haven't always gotten all the way there yet. As we develop and we grow, we are laying our path down, developing it.
Yeah.
But there are stones that people in our past have put in front of us, and those could be anything, from circumstances, situations, where we have to change them and, continue forward with them, But that's why I think that to say that tarot cards tell the future is not true.
Might be a stretch, but I think you could even back that up with nothing other than the Bible, too. In Proverbs, it says, a man chooses his way, but the Lord directs his steps.
Right.
So man determines the path that they go down, and along the way you pray, meditate, figure out what your next steps are, but it is your choice in, like you said, how those bricks are laid, that road
There
that
was
we're
the
going down.
tradition within the Israelite culture of casting of lots and the Urim and the Thummim in terms of like determine something. I don't know as much about the Urim and the Thummim in that's
Old
mentioned
Testament.
a lot in the Old Testament, and in particular the laws, the Torah, when it talks about the Levitical priesthood. There was this method of determining things called the Urim and the Thummim, only mentioned a couple times to determine. I can't remember the context in which something needed to be determined, and then something we see more commonly throughout the Bible is the casting of lots. To where I think many different cultures, they had their tradition of. I think there's much in the Bible that can be traced back to like sympathetic magic, forms of magic in their culture where it's not. Oh, it's not magic though. It's not.
Right.
But it is. Possibly, maybe, probably not.
I mean, take any piece of technology that exists now 200 years ago, and it would be magic anyway.
That's true.
Who determines what magic is?
A lot of people think magic is science that's
The
just
church.
not quite figured out yet. So
That's exactly what I think it is. Like, I don't think I really
that's kind of how
believe in magic in itself. I believe there's some kind of spiritual
That's how I kind of frame spirituality.
ability
in a
to
certain sense.
either manifest or find peace in yourself, or just to know what to do, what direction to take your life. But I wouldn't necessarily attribute that to magic. Mm-hmm. Like the more you learn, like lightning could look like magic that the gods are throwing down from the sky,
Right.
and then
People thought that.
science catches up and can rationally explain it through physics and math. Mm-hmm. And I think magic's the same thing. It's just science, like you said, that hasn't been explained yet. That's a good way to put it.
That's kind of how I think of spirituality sometimes, like praying. When somebody prays or manifests, meditates, maybe it's something psychological that we don't understand yet, or I think eventually I think there's nothing that can't eventually be explained by science.
That and our science has gone a pretty unanimous direction down, like electrophysics, magnetism, silicon, in that aspect. But there's
So many different
probably
avenues.
other ways, that technology,
I was thinking even more about psychology.
like how everybody likes to explain how the pyramids were built. And one theory is they use sound. They all, they built these
Vibrations.
chambers around where the next rock's going up, and they all would sing this one note, and it would amplify in this area so strong that it would levitate the rock, and then they could push it around where it needed to go. That would be a kind of technology, It's just they had that figured out. Maybe the power, like how they say you only use like 90% of your brain, maybe that other, or you only use 10% of it and 90% isn't used. Well, maybe that other 90% is, kind of what you would call magic, or the things that we just scratch our heads about today because we can't figure it out with physics and electricity. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe they did figure it out back then, but just in a different way. The technology just has gone in different directions.
I believe that it's part of your brain that you're just not tapping into.
Like maybe spirituality is like the other 90%. Like there's just like,
I think so.
yeah.
For whatever conspiratorial reason you want to put to it, I think that we're all kind of limited in those aspects today.
I doubt,
Chemicals
I doubt any narrative of any religion as like, this is how we came to be, this is the purpose of the world, yada, yada, yada. But I don't doubt the religious experience. I don't doubt the spiritual experience, because I think that's the most solid thing we have is our own experience, and that we like praying, meditating, manifesting. I do think there's something. I do think there's something to that. I do.
I don't think you could argue that there's something to it because people get results at the end of the day. Mm. So what's the influence? Is it a muse? Is it God? Is it the devil? Angels? Demons? Like you're getting results. I think even the intent of your heart kind of depends if it's good or bad. Like, are you using it for malice or for good? But like you can absolutely manifest. You can, like, there's even going down, okay, in like the Montauk Project, remote viewing, actually seeing events unfold different places. Like the CIA was doing these tests here. I think it was like 80s or 90s when they wrapped it up. But they would take these kids and exercise them in remote viewing, and some of these kids end up going through the system for 30 years. And I think with like 60% accuracy, which, it's not great, but still they can tell you, some guy sitting in a room and draws something on a piece of paper, they'll tell you what he drew. Mm-hmm. Just remote viewing it. So what is that?
Or like the psychedelic experience. Or dreaming. Just even dreaming. Yeah. The whole process of a story that our brain, apparently, that I believe I believe that's something that me and you disagree on, is that I believe that it's like our brain experiencing our brain. You've said perhaps you think we might be going somewhere else. Possibly.
I don't know what I believe about it.
So
open to interpretation.
I had a dream.
Yes.
So I grew up on the West Coast, and I have very particular dreams. I moved here. That's only relevant because I had a dream about a person who I worked with once. Yep, Washington.
Yes.
I had a dream that I was sitting in a waiting room, and he was sitting in the waiting room with his wife, and they were very nervous looking. They were very worried. And then later they walked out, and they were both very happy. And in the dream, I realized that they were expecting, and they were going to be having a baby. And so sometimes I have these very strange dreams. And when I have these dreams about people, I often let them know that I had this very strange dream about you. So I messaged him and said, I had this dream that you and your wife were kind of waiting for something to happen. And I think that you guys might be, expecting or looking to be expecting soon. And I'm sorry if this dream seems weird or off. And he said, actually, we just found out we were pregnant and we haven't told anybody yet. Wow. And this is, that was one of the first major dreams that I've had like that.
Yep.
So I've had another dream where this guy that I actually went to school with, he was on a tour bus and he was talking and he was really happy and he was doing all these like things. And I was just like, this is really cool because I was just watching it happen. So later I messaged him. I'm like, I had this really weird dream about you, and he was actually been laid off for a while, not doing anything. He's a musician. He plays a bass. And very shortly after that, he got signed to a very major band called Issues. And, it's funny because people...
Shout out to Issues.
It's funny because people... your dreams can mean nothing if they mean nothing. But I feel like some people, if you're connected, you have to have this open, you have to be open to, you have to be willing and wanting in a way for these things to happen, because a lot of people will shut them down and I don't want this. Like, it's the same as if you believe people can talk to ghosts or spirits. If you're shutting it down and you don't want it to happen, that's, a turning off switch. So same with your dreams. If you're willing for certain things to happen, I feel like that's people who can astral project, people who are like, I want to go and fly to Mars in my dreams. And whether they really do or don't, they have that experience, and they can make that happen. But when I have dreams, they're either completely random about nothing or about someone and something specific. And so I can tell the difference between, does this dream feel like it's actually something happening, or is this like some random thing my brain's just throwing together?
Remember that dream that Northrop told us?
Remind me.
He said he was, this is an old episode that we did, but he said that he was visited in a dream by an old man.
No, this wasn't in a dream. This was in his meditative...
Oh, he was meditating.
Yeah. This wasn't in a dream. This wasn't in a dream. That was like...
Well, still, how do you explain that? He's visited by this old man who has come to Africa, and while he was there, he met his spouse, and come to find out that the old man that he saw in this meditative state was the grandpa of his spouse, who was in a wheelchair and couldn't talk.
Right. I think
how do you explain
it goes back to your mind. If you want something so bad, like maybe that old man prayed every day for her to find someone, and that projected out because, I think it's a way in the sense to connect to your mind, whether you're, because for me, prayers connect to the universe. If you believe in God, they can, connect you to God, whatever you believe into. So I think that if, I had somebody who going back to dreams, just in that sense, she prayed really hard for answers about things that were happening in her life. When I got these dreams that were the answers that I felt that she was praying for, she didn't like that because I wasn't a Christian. And she wanted answers given to her directly by God from a Christian. And I feel like if you pray for something, you can't necessarily poo-poo where the answers come from. Because if you know,
Definitely.
and if they're right and if they're true, you know, you can be praying for something and somebody says, you know, I might not be of that religion, but I had this feeling or this dream or this instinct and it told me to do this for you, or you know, to move that way, to connect to you, however it was, you know, and it comes to be true and it answers your prayers. And how can you say, well, you know, that wasn't how I wanted it done, you know? And I think that in a way it goes back to the mind. It goes back to intuition. I think that if you're more willing to connect to your own mind, you're willing to sit with yourself, and you can do that. That leads to the connective prayer. That leads to connecting to other people.
I think there's something like a still small voice, you know, because there's like certain paths, like you said earlier on in the episode, certain paths we choose that could determine the outcome, right? I lost my thought.
Still small voice.
Yes, thank you. You know, and there's just different things that I think sometimes I think the people that rise to being very impactful in society, following their dreams, being the greatest artists, just the impactful people, I think there was a still small voice they listened to. And I think that's the human predicament there's so many different thoughts that come through our minds, you know. I don't think we understand this stream of conscious that we're experiencing. But I think there's certain ones that it is important to listen to throughout life. Maybe that sounds crazy, and I consider it something like a still small voice. And I think sometimes, like I think of the story of Jonah. God told Jonah to go prophesy to Nineveh, tell them to repent, or God's judgment will indeed come upon them. And the Israelites, they had been heavily persecuted by the Ninevites, so that was the last thing that Jonah wanted to do. So he hopped on a ship to Tarshish. Well, the ship got overtaken by a great mighty storm. Jonah said, "This is because of me. I'm running away from God.
My bad."
Picked me up, tossed me in the water, and the storm was subsiding. He did that, and he was in the water, and a great fish came and brought Jonah to Nineveh, where Nineveh,
it's like Sunday school again.
Jonah eventually did what he had to do. So, I think sometimes there's like these gut urges, these things that we feel like we need to do, and sometimes when we don't listen to that, maybe the universe kind of gently nudges, pushes. You know, maybe I'm hyping up the purpose, or you know, creating this podcast too much, but I had it in my gut for months, like we need to do that, and then I was avoiding it, I was procrastinating, and then some random stranger
traversing the strange world
says, "Are you going to start that podcast?" And I'm like, "What the hell are you talking about?" You know, maybe that was the universe nudging me in a direction that I was like, maybe I was Jonah in that sense on my ship.
What's important is that you listened, because I think equally when you start putting those things out and putting forth your intention, like this is going to be successful, I'm going to make this content.
Such an adventure has unraveled since then. And it's a combination of something that I believe is supposed to happen and something that I'm determined to make happen, you know. I believe that.
Exactly.
Yes.
You have to put just as much effort in the things that you want to make them come to fruition. So.
Yes.
And fearing an outcome that you don't want puts energy towards that outcome that you don't want. Like if you would have never put out the podcast, never texted me about starting it, never did any of that, I think that would equally, as much as what we're doing now is saying, yeah, we're going to do this and we're going to make it.
And I don't know what would have happened if
episodes.
That stranger didn't.
Well, if you didn't do that, you know, wouldn't that be telling the universe, like, you know, I don't really need your guidance. Like, I don't, you know, thanks for the inspiration,
right.
But
and I think it's like,
I'm not going to do it. Then you're probably not going to get that inspiration later.
To quote another Bible story, we have the story of Esther. Esther, by chance, she ended up married to the king of Persia in the story, and the prince of Persia. And at a time where the Jews were about to be heavily persecuted by the Persians, Esther was put in this position where she could make a difference. She could affect the outcome. And Mordecai, her uncle, tells her that if you deny this, God will indeed choose somebody else. But perhaps, there's, this, he basically is saying the stars are aligned. You're here for a purpose, And so I think sometimes, like you said, the universe nudges us and we push away,
Great events of the world will
we
happen.
ignore it, yeah.
And they're waiting for somebody that's willing to make them happen, step up.
And I think so, maybe that's how maybe like great ideas, they land on certain people. Maybe an idea is like alive in itself. Maybe it's like the muse. It lands on a person, but if the person doesn't keep cultivating what they need to cultivate to keep that idea with them, the idea leaves them and finds somebody else.
Can't tell you how many
Possibly.
ideas I've had for a song while I'm like riding the motorcycle or something, and by the time I stopped to write it down, I forgot what the heck it was.
Because there's
Like,
there's the shit ideas, and then there's the ideas that are
The sparks.
bam,
Yeah.
it hits you.
dude,
And
you know what I've told you, like what I always say about the music is like, for when I'm writing these songs, I have to keep writing or else that skill kind of goes away, and then you got to get it back. But by making all these trash songs, right, stuff you're never going to use, whether lyrics, music, whatever, that keeps your ability sharp enough that when the inspiration comes, when you have a good idea,
Right.
you can accurately and efficiently record it and get that idea down.
Right.
But you
Yes.
have to go through all that, the crap stuff,
Yeah.
to
You wade through the muck to get to the clear water.
right. Yep.
And yes, yeah, I think success, whatever way that the person, if things are meant to happen, they're meant to experience success. That success is a byproduct of treating that dream, that idea, properly.
So we've rabbit holed quite a bit. Let's get back to this tarot deck.
Yeah.
Now we were talking
we were
about
getting to know the tarot card reader, interpreter, a little bit.
all started with, is it actual magic? So does Aleister Crowley, we've brought him up, did he have anything to do with the formation of tarot into what we have now?
It was before him.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I know, but like, did he have an influence over it to make it what it is today at all?
no. So I would say no, because the only influence he has is he created his own deck, and then thusly anyone who follows him would probably use it. So in that category, yes. But as what we know it is, no. He didn't develop the cards. He didn't, write them out. He didn't, develop the spreads that we know and use beyond his own secular division of what he did after everything else. So.
Interesting.
By the way, if anybody wants to come on here, who's a bit of a Aleister Crowley nerd / expert, hit us up. Piece
Yeah,
of
I don't
tools
know enough to go on
at
about that, so.
gmail.com. We had somebody, but they weren't able.
Right.
So how many cards are in there?
So a normal deck has like 78 cards, but this one has 2 extra because the artist added their own 2 cards to it.
What's the significance of 78?
Good question.
There isn't really that I know of, at least, because they have the deck split. So there's the major arcana or arcana, depending on how you pronounce it, and then the minor. The minor is the original Tarocchi, or was it Tarocchi? I can't say it. It's Italian, whatever. But that's the original game, is the minor arcana.
Tarot.
Yeah. And then later on, when the occultists come along, he added the major arcana cards. And so the cards are split between... So the minor arcana is actually the same as a regular card deck. You've got the same setup through the cards. There's, hearts. There's the cups. There's the spades. What is that? Oh, no, that's the clubs, the spades, whatever. They're all, the same. So you can read a regular card deck for the minor arcana the same way you can read a tarot card deck. Because they were developed afterwards, the cards. So the major arcana, it tells you kind of more of your personal life goals, issues, things going on. And the minor arcana associates you with sort of people around you and the things happening around you.
Okay.
Is it tied into astrology at all?
There are astrology symbols and things. You can use their, our water signs, earth signs. You can associate those then with, a Sagittarius or a Taurus, whatever.
And it's just-
But not everybody always uses all those and reads. Like there are symbolism in some cards where there's always an animal and there's always a flower and there's always a this. Some decks don't have that because it's, that was in the original Rider-Waite-Smith deck, but it's, developed as its own thing. So people have become their own, like my deck's specifically different because it's, its own thing by its own artist.
Why did you choose this deck?
I was given this deck. Why did I bring it though?
Yeah.
Well, I brought it with me because it's one I use to interact with people.
You have more than one.
Yeah, I have like 12.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
And then I have some Oracle decks which are completely different. So, but this one I use when I interact with people. There's one I have that was one of the first ones I learned on, and I don't use with anybody but myself. So there's just personal or not. So
yeah. I was asking about astrology because I just thought about it. It's like, well, a normal deck of cards is an ace and 12 cards, and there's 4 suits.
Yeah.
Right, so like your 4 suits would be the elements, and you have your 12 signs in the cards.
Right.
With an ace.
And did we cover what the significance of the number 78 is associated with?
I don't know that there is an actual, at least that I know with tarot for 78. I mean, there could be, but
and you said you had
I don't know.
These other decks, what'd you call them?
So I have other tarot decks, and then I have oracle decks. Oracle decks are something completely different. Lots of different kinds, but they're cards you can use to guide yourself in different ways. I have a couple different ones. One of my favorite ones is it's the Spirit de Luna one, so it's the moon phases. They're actually round cards that look like the moon too, but they don't read the same the way as tarot deck. They can tell you certain situations. They're more like guidance in the right now. People use them for stuff like that, I guess.
I asked my little buddy, ChatGPT, what the significance of 78 in tarot was, and this was his answer. 78 is the total number of cards in a standard tarot deck, divided into 22 major arcana, representing universal archetypes, spiritual lessons, and life's overarching themes. The Fool, the Magician, the Tower. 56 minor arcana, but it's not saying...
Yeah, I don't believe that there's actually any significance to 78 unless, there is and it's been lost to time.
7 plus 8 equals 15, and 1 plus 5 is 6 in numerology. The number 6 corresponds lovers. I'm not seeing a specific...
Yeah, and I don't really know numerology myself, so...
Yeah.
Not enough to say, I guess.
Yeah, like 40...
We should do a whole episode on gematria.
That would be very
the significance
cool.
of numbers.
Yes. That was what I was curious to know, the gematria behind it.
So I can do a reading for someone, or I don't know if there's time to do it for everybody. I'm not sure what the time actually is.
You're about 37 minutes in.
How long does a reading take?
It really just depends. When I would do it in shop, I would always set a timer for about 15 minutes because you can always go longer depending on what's happening. Sometimes you can, sit down with somebody and pull a couple cards, and that's really all that's, set down. It just depends. For me anyways, because I do intuitive flow. When people do spreads, they might have their own set way and things they do. So,
who's volunteering?
Rock, paper, scissors.
All right. Is Darla in on this too?
No.
Shout out to Darla sitting here.
Yeah. Shout out to my wife, Darla.
Hi, guys. Hi, strangers.
All right.
2 out of 3?
No. Just whoever.
Okay, rock, paper, scissors, then shoot?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
All right. Toodles goes first.
Aye.
I'm going to have to maneuver down here a little bit so that I can be closer to the table.
Do what you need to.
Probably be all right, but I do need to loosen this so I can go over that. Oh, so the mic's coming up.
Ooh, hear that?
Does that go down far?
Sounds like a guitar.
Here we go.
All right.
We got a lot more room in here than in our studio.
We do?
4 people with plenty of room in here. And in this little room we have the studio in, nobody's seen it yet that listens to this show. The thing's only like 12 feet wide, maybe 16 long. But by the time you surround all the walls with tables and stuff, it gets kind of tight. Put some chairs in there, another table in the middle, mountains of guitar amps.
Okay. So who's going first?
Jonathan.
Guess
All right.
I will.
I would really like one, so if we
No
can
problem.
do both. Then.
So I like to say when I give people readings that if there's anything on your mind, it might come up. If it's something that you'd like to talk about, that's fine. If you don't want to, that's fine too. Sometimes it can be personal. I've done readings where people cry. And
I hope I cry.
And it can be one of those things. It just really depends on what headspace you are and how touch and close you are to things. I will say that women are far more willing to do tarot readings. In the whole year that I worked at the shop, I swear I only had maybe 10 or less men who wanted to come through and do tarot readings.
You men out there need to stop being pussies and go and get your tarot card reading done, okay?
It is one of those weird things, I think.
Just did a masculinity episode.
Yeah.
But part of
You
it, I
wanna be
think maybe some men
masculine.
aren't as curious.
You know
or
what
maybe
the real
they're just,
masculine thing to do is
You're right.
go get a tarot card reading from a lady. That's pretty much the most manly thing you can do, pretty
And
much.
then when you go to church on Sunday, tell everybody what you did.
Even
Yeah.
if it was just fun. I mean,
Proudly.
why not? That's the thing is a lot of people, want to say, well, because, in the Bible, you're not supposed to look for the future and divine, only God can tell you. And that's why people associate it with, but that's also where I think that people get it wrong because it's not a tool to tell you the future, like I say. Like, it's not something that, it's just to help you in the now, I feel like. And that's part of where there's a misconception on it. But there's a misconception on a lot of things. So.
like the prophets of the Bible, some of our oldest stories we have of prophets, they would start prophesying after somebody started playing music for them. Like we have Saul, and then we have I believe it was Micaiah in the book of 2 Kings. Those books in the order of the Bible, they're not believed to be some of the oldest created, but those are actually according to historians and scholars, some of the oldest books created in the Bible. And so we have those as examples of how that again sounds very magical, sounds very
Right.
shamanistic. Somebody playing a little tune for you, and then you can access your prophetic powers. So
I definitely don't think that there have always been like muses and prophets and things like that over time. So somebody there to say something
seer.
because they're connected to it. Yeah.
the seer,
Who the heck was that prophet guy in Supernatural? I forgot his name.
was it Elijah?
What a disgrace. No, it was some modern guy. Just
In Judaism, we have Elijah. He's a prophet who, like many, there's
Elias.
so many. There's a lot of stories in the Talmud, but also a variety of other Jewish folklore where you have Elijah appearing at these miraculous times to like teach somebody a lesson or perform a miracle. Actually, every Passover in Judaism, they set out a cup of wine for Elijah.
So when I was a kid, because I was heavily indoctrinated in church, grew up in it, Christian school, Sunday school, everything that is Christian that you can put me in the box, that's how I grew up. So I'd read these Old Testament stories about people making these offerings, and I would go out in the backyard and I put these little stones on the top of our doghouse. Like, here, God, these are for you. They're the prettiest ones I could find.
Oh, that's nice.
And then they'd
Right.
still be there the next day. Like, you didn't come for your stones.
God wanted to leave them sitting there.
Yeah, appreciate
likes
him from
looking at 'em.
afar.
You can see him right out of his office.
So the
Here
first
we
card
go.
that I pull, I like to tell people is a card of self. By that I mean it's a card that can represent you, and it doesn't necessarily mean that like it truly does, but it can be how either you feel you fit in, or how you're seen, or how you feel like other people see you, which doesn't always make it true, but can be part of the story that will develop from the tarot card. So this first card here is the Hierophant. When we get this card, it's usually somebody who's in a seat of position where they're like to help and teach people. They're one of those people who I know a lot of these things, and so when somebody comes along who needs my skills, I'm there to help and I'm willing to do. And from that, usually I will pull other cards, more cards, and then develop more from what that says. When we get to like the base card, like I said, you never just pull one card because you can't really tell the whole thing from that. But in this base cards, that we're starting with a base of somebody who's knowledgeable and willing to share that knowledge.
So I have to ask, from the skeptic's perspective, how? So what you just said for the last card, okay, it's 100% true, but it sounds like it'd be relatable to a lot of people at the same time.
Well, it could
So-
be. That's why you pull more cards. Because when you pull one card, it's just one thing, and you could relate to it. There's the...
Sorry, I got to put a little pressure on
No,
you.
you're okay. There's the I just want to revert to something millennial here, I guess, the South Park episode of Stan and the, I think it's Chris Angel or whatever. No.
Yes.
Magician.
The psychic one is what I'm thinking of, not the magician one, sorry. The one where he's
I know what you're talking about.
yeah, so he just goes out there and says random things that can relate to anyone.
Yes.
And that is definitely not what tarot is, because this is the meaning of that card. You know what, I don't know.
And she's laying him down based on something, if I understand it properly, it's what resonates with you in interpretation for
Yes.
him. Yes.
So I always start with the center card here, and then I always build off of that center card. So a lot of times when I build off the center card, it forms one of two things, usually. There's also a third thing. And it's usually either a butterfly, which means center and then two masses, or a diamond, which is center and then built around it. And occasionally it's a wave, which is more linear. And this kind of associates with, if it's a center and you have one side and another, usually it's a split between certain things that are happening in one part of your life and certain things that are happening in another. Usually when it's a diamond, these things are all correlating together now. When it's a line, it's usually this is a linear path that you've been walking and are nearly towards the end of or on track of. So yes, they can sound very general, but that's why usually you pull more cards, because we start with one card that can only tell you so much, but once the other cards are laid and developed, it kind of shows you more. And there's nothing wrong with asking, being skeptical about it too, because especially if it's not something you believe in and you want to know more about, the only way to know is to ask questions. So
Exactly.
So the next card that I pulled over here is the High Priestess. The High Priestess is usually somebody who's very, in the best ways, full of themselves. This sounds like terrible, but it's one of these things that...
No, I agree.
Well,
that sounds like Toodles.
And in this sense, it's one of these things that I'm practiced in what I've learned. I've spent a lot of time doing it.
It's not a misguided sense of being full of
Well, no, yeah, I've spent a lot of time doing it. If you're going to come to me and ask me specifically if you want guidance from me, I'm going to give it to you how I know it. You know what I mean? There's no, I'm not going to dance around or sugarcoat it. I'm going to give it to you how it is, because first off, you're coming to me for this advice, so you're asking me about it. So I'm going to tell you all the things I know and the way I do it, and that's where this is connected here. Mm-hmm. Because this card on its own means something, but then when you put them together, it's saying, I'm going to give it straightforward, and I'm not going to dance around with you. So it's kind of silly, because as we pull more cards, it'll just continue from there. Mm-hmm. And then like I said, if there's questions or and when I lay cards down, a lot of times when I do it in the intuitive flow, it's because it's where I feel like they go. When you do, structured, layouts, they're their own thing, which, if you're more interested in tarot, it's something to look up on, but it's not really how I do them anymore. So this next card that I pulled is the Four of Cups. When you get a Four of Cups situations, it's usually one of those things where you've been given a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of choices for you to do, whether it's like in career or life. But usually it's, I'm focused on this one thing right now, but I know that there are these other things I can do. And not that I should be or could be doing, but there's always another option here for me. But a lot of times in this one, this is a guided choice. I feel drawn to the thing I'm doing. I am focused on the thing I'm doing because I'm drawn to it. I'm connected to it. Even if I have these other options, and they're there for me, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm drawn to them the same way I'm drawn to what I'm doing right now, or the thing that I'm striving to make, my goal, or, the thing that I want everything to be about.
Okay.
And that's interesting.
So this next card here is the Knight of Cups. So there are knight cards in all the suits. Cups, cups are representative of our hearts. So a lot of times they're associated with things that are closer to our heart, whether, directly to love or not, but things that we are passionate about. When you get the Knight of Cups, that's usually a very chivalrous person. Yeah, sorry. Who's, willing to put down their sword for the people around them and saying, I'm going to stand up and do this for you. Especially if you've come to me in a time of where, I need guidance. I'm not sure what to do with myself or where to go. Could you please help me? And you're going to be like, I'm right there for you. And yes, that can be a very general thing, especially if you're, you just can describe anything, but we're associating it back to this. So we're, coming back to this at all points, because that's where we started out at. So this is, connecting to the choices. A lot of times you might have choices that you feel like, maybe I should be doing this for those other people around me, but sometimes I have to look into my own self and say, what's the best choice for me right now? Because as much as I could toil away at one thing for someone else, what's going to get me the farthest and where I want to be? And I think that can be where we look back into ourselves for the chivalry for ourselves too. Like, don't forget to do that, because we can be so there for everybody else, but when we're on our track for ourselves, we have to be the same type of person for ourselves that we are for other people.
Well, one thing I can attest to for Jonathan is that there's been plenty of times I've been podcast co-host diva. But despite that, there's not another friend that's taken my dreams more seriously than
Right.
Jonathan. And that's a special thing.
That's good.
He's a special person for that.
Right. Somebody who's there for you.
He's and I hope he takes his dreams as seriously as he's taken mine. I know he does. I know he
Right.
does. That's why he's my homie.
So we come down over to this side here, and the next card we have is the Four of Wands.
Four of Wands.
Wands, sorry.
Wands.
It is light print on some of the writing, but so when we get into or the Five of Wands, sorry, we get into a situation where we have a lot of people and a lot of voices going off all at once. So I think in this situation, it's time to mention that there can be cards that are inverted to the reader, which sometimes they have their own meaning, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're negative, but in that way, there's an influence where it almost feels like, even when there's a lot of voices going on and my voice is not being heard, I'm not going to shout over everyone else, where a lot of other people would to be heard. And I think that's where we can look in the situation, because a lot of times with, a normal card, regular, facing the right way up, it has one meaning. But when you flip it the other way, and not everybody always reads them that way, because sometimes you put a card down, it's like, well, it might have that inverted meaning, but it doesn't feel that way. Sometimes they just lay the way they are. But a lot of times this would see, I'm trying to get my voice heard and it's not being heard. And this here's not I'm not going to be heard, but I'm going to be heard in the time in which it's my turn, because I can't force myself to shout over people who aren't already hearing me. Like I can't, push myself in and make a hole for people who aren't willing to listen as it is. So once the room is quiet, I will talk again. I will take my turn, because then they will hear me. There's no point in shouting over everybody else, because they're just going to continue to ignore what's happening right now. So I think that when you get this connection, where this connection is actually to this High Priestess card, where, we know thyself, we're going to be true to ourselves. And in a situation where we have to advocate for ourselves, we're going to be, or whatever we want, solid in that, but we're not going to fight other people for what they're wanting as well. And that's not saying that we're not willing to compromise, because that's not what that is, but it's more like, when it's my turn and you guys aren't respecting that, I'm going to point that out. And then when it's your turn, I will respect you, because that's the type of thing that I want as well. It's more about that. I feel like
Reciprocity.
Kind of give what you, or what is it? What is the word?
You get what you give.
Yeah, treat
Trading
people the way you want to be
energy.
treated. I think that's more what it is.
Matching
Yeah.
energy.
Because even though people might shout and you want to be heard, that shouting's not the answer. And I think that's where that comes back into this. So even when people, they come to you and they want help and they're not listening to the help that you gave, you'll know that person will learn that lesson, come back to you, and then actually listen the next time around. As I feel like that's more what that's saying. Like, because some people can ask for advice and then not take that advice and like, what the heck, what happened, what went wrong? Come back to you and like, well, did you actually do this or did you do that? And then, did you follow the advice I gave you, or did you just do what you wanted to do anyway? And that's why you're in the position you're in. I think it's coming back to a willingness to always be there for some people too, even when they, I don't want to say done something wrong, but when they did it wrong and they're, messed up and they're like, oh, can you help me again? Willing to help the same people with the same situations. And when it's connected to this High Priest, I feel like there's a specific person too that you're kind of always there for, on a repeat help. Like there's somebody who's like, constantly, I don't want to say constantly making the wrong choices, because that sounds terrible, but there's somebody there who's constantly kind of fighting themselves in choices that they're making, and you're always there to say, it's all right, try again, do something different this time, make a different choice. And they kind of seem like they can repeatedly picking the same choices, but you're still there being like, come on, you can get there. I know you can get there. That's what it feels like. Oh, I can get there. Like, I know that sounds weird, and I'm sorry for like coming off like that, but that's kind of what it feels like. There's a person that you're in a repeat situation with, and that person is just constantly doing the same thing, and you're like, please just do this different thing, because it'll be so much better for you.
The way you delivered it, I would not change anything about it. It's perfect.
So this next card here is the Wheel of Fortune. When we get a Wheel of Fortune, it can be related to one of those things like we've circled something. We've come around to like a whole, situation. So, and I think this tied to that situation where we come to the Wheel of Fortune, we can relate it to like a karma sort of thing, or a repeat situation where, we've done these things, and so we're going to get these feedbacks from it. It's just action applied. So, I put these actions in, especially when you come to certain people, like, if you say yes to these people, I want to help you, as if you did to him, and you guys are, the ball's rolling and it's going, and you got a situation where that, that's the outcome from the action that we did. That's the quote unquote karma, or, because that's not what karma is, but that's how they use it in the deck. So, But in that situation where we can say, you know, I'm sticking through with the situations and the things that I'm doing, I'm helping the people get to where they need to be, and then we get these rollovers. And in the best way, I guess, it's almost like it's never ending, because I don't want to say like it's terrible, like you don't want to help people, because that's not the situation. But it's always like there's one thing and then there's another, and then there's another, and then there's another.
Okay.
So on this opposite side, we come over to here. So we've got a chariot. So the chariot is somebody in the situation where that's a major arcana cards. We've got that here too. That's what these connected cards are when you get the Roman numerals on the card too. So the chariot is somebody who like is in charge of their own life. They're going to be, I'm, you know, taking life by the reins and I'm directing it. And so when we get to this, especially the situation where it comes to other people, we're connected to this, you know, situation where we're in a loop with somebody else. You know, I can only do so much for you because I'm in charge of myself. And I think that's where this comes back to, is we know that solidly, you know, and they know that too, where they know that they can only do for themselves as much as they can do. And if they're not the ones doing it, I can't be the ones to do it fully. I can only direct so much. They have to actually put themselves in the position to do so. And I think in this, where we're in a situation where it comes back to this clump of things where there's, you know, I can tell you what you need to be told, I can point you in the right direction, but you are eventually going to have to get there yourself. And I think we're in a situation where, you know, you're driving your own chariot, and even if you have, you know, a wife or a partner or whoever, and you're in a situation together, you know, they still can only be so much in charge of your chariot as you are of theirs. And in situations, even with even, you know, work people that we just associate all the time, you can only control yourself and what you do. You can hope that those people do the best thing, especially if they're seeking active advice from you and wanting these outcomes to change, but they're not actually fully following through or doing. It can kind of seem like, well, I'm doing all of my things. What are you doing? Like, come on, let's do them together, because we said we would. You said you want to be a part of this, and let's go. And I think that's where we're set up onto this chariot is, you know, you're constantly making sure your life's driving in the right direction, doing the things that are good and suitful for you. And you want those people around you to be doing those things too, so that you can all be striving and moving in the right direction. But it seems like there might be other people who are kind of stuck or not fully going, or there's just hiccups happening. And it's like, you know, that doesn't mean I have to fully stop my chariot. I can't do that. I can't just stop doing everything I'm doing. But I want to continue to help you, but I need you to help yourself. That's what the situation feels like in that way, where especially somebody who wants to help and is driven to do.
That's my dog. Sorry.
Oh, you're okay. Coming back on this opposite side, we have the Ace of Cups, which is also connected to another cups that moves back. The aces are one of those things that are base for each one. So the Ace of Cups is one of those things we associate with hope. Like, you know, the visual is overflowing. We're, you know, filled with everything that we need, whether it be, you know, faith, whether it be hope, whether it be love. It's all right there. And when I'm tapping into that, I'm following what I feel is right for me, as in those choices that feel divine, feel guided, and I'm doing everything right. I feel good and everything feels hopeful. And so I know that eventually everything else will get there. That's what it feels like. Like, I have that hope and that faith that it'll all around the corner and we'll get to where we need to be, because it's already going that way. It's, you know, the ball's rolling. I'm putting the action into it.
If I could sit here and break down every one of these cards that you've pulled so far, I would say you haven't touched on anything that isn't really important to me, or some kind of passion, or something that I'm specifically dealing with right now. Like, hey, I'm trying to help you. This is what you need to do, but they're not listening. I'm screaming into the darkness, you know.
Right.
Going into the card that you said, helping people, being a teacher, taking what I know and sharing it with somebody else. That's one of the things that I'm most passionate about, except for the art of the music that I make, is literally those two things.
Right.
And with the music, we get into some of the others of like, okay, I'm making new music every day, writing new lyrics every day. I just was telling him I just got a gimbal to start doing more video content. And like, I'm doing the stuff that I can to put it into action. You know, your Wheel of Fortune card, I said, like, there's these things that keep coming up to just beat you back a little bit. You know, moving to Phoenix 8 years ago or whatever it was, I just got manipulated left and right when I was out there, from apartments, you know, violating their lease agreements, charging more money, just all kinds of stuff. Then COVID ruining this whole internship that I had set up in LA, and coming back here and then starting to get the music, getting the momentum again, and then boom, work goes to 6 days a week, and
Right.
it's hard. And yeah, like everything that you're saying, like I can't explain how much you're kind of blowing my mind.
Well, I'm not saying like when you
Like-
start out and it's good to ask questions and be skeptical and you want to know like, well, this could be a general thing, but then like I said, when you pull the more cards and it starts to make sense, at least to me, more of what's happening and where you can connect that to what's happening in your life, and I think that sometimes people have never really told me I've ever been so far off or wrong about anything. But I think a lot of times some people will come in expecting something to happen or to be one thing and then not realize that that's not how it is or it'll be different. Mm-hmm. And then be like, oh, wow, this is
I wish I could.
something completely different. And this is the way I do it. So, it's one of those things like.
I wish I could break it down in a sufficiently eloquent, articulate way.
Mind if I take a picture?
Oh, go for
to
it.
make listeners know like how wildly accurate this is, because I'm sure that it doesn't sound as impactful saying it. Listen to two people do a reading,
Right, yeah.
as when you're here in person. But I'm telling you that I'm surprised.
Right, and I get that. It's different. When COVID happened, I tried doing readings via like Zoom calls and stuff like that. And although you're still face to face, it's not really the same as being in person with somebody.
Because
where you can.
that part of the reading is reading the person's vibe.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
I know what these things mean to me, but somebody's listening would
Doesn't
probably just think, okay, like that's what that card means, how this card means. But I'm tying these in, like this Five of Wands. For a minute, I was like, that's kind of weird. I can't really relate to. Boom! Then it hit me. I'm like, oh frick! I didn't even think of that person. But that is
Right.
absolutely right.
right.
Do you have more to add to this?
We don't have to go on because, especially with this last card that I pulled, being as long as you're focusing on those things that you are hopeful for and wanting to happen for you, because it
That's
goes
my
back to
favorite
being
one is-
you make sure you're being chivalrous for yourself. You know what I mean? To say that you're not, but to make sure you're not putting yourself above or in front of everyone else, but more that, if you would treat one person this way, treat yourself that way. If you would go to the moon for them, go to the moon for yourself, because
Despite my ego
you know,
card.
and that's the hard part, especially if you're like, well, this song is crap and I'm going to throw it in the crap bucket. Maybe it was, but you wrote it and other people didn't take the time of day to
Right.
even do
It's-
that.
it's
So,
practice towards the good stuff. That's just
and
how
you'll
I
get
look
there
at
and
it.
your art, it's a flow. You're there, you're in charge and you're on the round. So, I would say just keep doing what you're doing and believing more in yourself than you ever have and you'll get there,
Yeah, and that Ace of Cups, is it called? The last one?
Yeah.
That is such a perfect way to end it, because at the end, I do look at this whole picture, when I look at the timeline of my own life, and I get to where I'm at right now. It's like, yeah, all this stuff got me through a weird sequence of events.
Right.
That the odds are against me being where I'm at.
Right.
With the experience that I have. But I'm still hopeful at the end of the day, to a passionate
Right.
level, like that I can't really explain, because it probably is going to sound like I'm just agreeing with you and like, but no,
But you were
like,
skeptical
that is
coming into it, so
one
I mean-
very important thing to me is
Right.
being hopeful of what can be, and
Right.
particularly with the music for me, and of what it's going to look like in the future if everything succeeds. And sometimes I'm not even present in the present, because I'm
Right.
just imagining like how good it's going to be later.
I get
you
that.
know?
That makes sense though too, because it's kind of forming the outcome you want. So
You can check out the new single, When the Lights Go Out,
Lights go out.
by Nate Visen, on Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere where there's music.
All DSPs.
And coming out soon, there should be the new album by Nate Visen.
Ooh, hey, don't put the album out there, yes.
This is going to be
That's going to be a while.
how long?
How long? I don't know, me.
Maybe it'll be inspired.
Probably like,
Early 2026.
yeah.
Is that probably
Probably
is probably going to come out sometime in December.
The goal is April, because that's 1 year after the original album, which is crappy. Just listen to the single Lights Go Out over and over. Don't worry about the first album. Real Facts is all right. That was pretty good.
you never know though. One song that you might not like at all, somebody's
Yeah, true.
favorite. So I mean,
I know. You hear that a lot. These
Maybe you
different
don't
artists,
always write them for
like,
you.
They
You
have
know.
these huge songs, like some of their top tens of their whole career, and then later in interviews they're like, "Yeah, we thought that was going to be junk. We
Right.
almost didn't even put it on the album."
Right.
Peace and
Nobody
Toodles
liked
have been working behind the scenes. We've been working on a new music video for a song in his upcoming album as well.
You know, we got to go back to that card that she drew for me about teaching people. I'm gonna teach you some videography.
Yeah.
skills, bro.
I came at this not claiming to be somebody who has videography skills or anything of that sort. He just asked, I'm being a supportive friend, and
How
he's
hard
like,
could it be
"Do
to
you want
hold
to
a
record
phone
this?
and get a
Do you
good
want to
video?"
record this for me?" And I'm like, "Sure."
Right.
And I didn't claim to have the.
I get that. It's a new skill to jump into.
We got horizon lines going angled across the screen. We got the top of my head
Goodness.
chopped off. If I'm looking in one direction, I'm looking in the direction that's the shorter distance
Oh,
across the
no.
screen. You know, composition issues is
Yeah,
what it is.
it's
Composition.
gotta make sure you got
That's
the
all it
right
is.
lighting and angles for everything.
So I'm telling you, like, even on that iPhone, you were shooting handheld, and I was watching them later. I was surprised at how stable it is. Like, that image stabilization they have in them is kind of insane. But, hey, this gimbal that I got has AI tracking. So all you
Really?
got to do is walk around,
Walk
and it'll
around.
keep me in the right place.
All right.
Right? So I got it for you, dog.
God for that.
And it keeps it level with the horizon. It won't tilt.
Well, looks like you got your problem solved.
Well, for
right.
the amount of money that little piece of
So
plastic
we're about
costs,
to
it
do
better get the
A
problem
tarot card
solved.
reading for peace.
All right.
Your turn.
So the first card here that I pulled is the Six of Cups. So like I said before, we associate cups with hearts. And that's usually something that you can look at as relationship-wise too, because a lot of things, you want to build from the heart. When we get the Six of Cups this year, specifically, some sort of relationship that we've had since we were young, usually it can relate to siblings or, just close family members. And that's when you look at the imagery on the card for that too. And somebody that you've known for a long time and that you've built a rapport with, you have a good relationship with, especially because the card is facing you. So we're going to move off from this. So next we have the Hermit. The Hermit is a card that we associate with somebody who's, willing to pull themselves away. And in that time away, we take it to learn and grow and better ourselves. A lot of times people think, oh, well, you're being a hermit and you're not associating with people or doing, but a lot of times that's like we're reflecting, especially if we're building or things have happened in our lives and we need to take the time to sort of separate ourselves and say we need to, take a deep breath, just think about all the things that have happened, do whatever we do to do that. So especially when we connect this to this, the Hermit to the Six of Cups, we can especially go to, there are certain people, especially in my life, that I know that when I'm having a tough time or I need a reflective moment, I can turn right to them and say, whatever I need to them. And that doesn't always even have to be like one specific person, but people that I've known for such a long time that the connection is just, they almost know more about myself than I do in that sense. You know what I mean?
I know lately I've been valuing my time of solitude a lot more. I feel like there was a time in my life where I felt pretty lonely and I felt like I just wanted to be around people all the time.
Right.
But now it's much more, I would rather be around around people that,
Right. And
There's
that can be
a-
it too. You have a connection with,
Yes.
because there's a difference between wanting, you can be in a crowd of people and still feel alone.
to where I
So,
feel.
it depends on
but at the
the
same
people around you
time,
sometimes.
when I'm alone in a crowd, I feel at peace.
I can get that too,
I
actually,
feel-
because I almost just feel like I'm just still myself. I
Yeah.
kind of not ignore everyone else, but I'm just in my own bubble going.
I feel like
and so
I used to be like one, but now I'm just like, there's been people that approach me and they're like, you're just sitting all by yourself. And I'm like, I'm not having a bad
Right.
time. But then we start talking. And,
Right. There's nothing wrong with being, being okay to think with your thoughts, sit with yourself. You know what I mean? And a lot of people have a hard time with that, especially, when it's something that you sought for a long time to be with other people and then realize, not that I don't want to be with other people, but I want to be with people who lift me up, people who support me in
Or
my
we're
ideas.
having like a conversation about something of substance.
Something there,
not
yeah.
just-
I get that. There's something to it. This next card here connected to that we've pulled. So is the Six of Pentacles, and this card here is one of those cards we associate with give and take. When we look at it together, it's usually somebody who's just as willing to give as they are to receive. If you help me, I want to help you. Even if you didn't help me, I want to help you, because it's not necessarily about getting back, it's about giving. So, even though I'm, I'm always willing to help and give and do. I don't really necessarily expect anything back, but when it does come back to me, tenfold, it just makes me want to give more. It makes me want to do more. It makes me want to help more.
Absolutely.
I think that's what that's associated, especially when we look into like this card associated with this one, where there are people that I would just lay down my life for, and they didn't have to ask me to do it. I would just do it. It's kind of a situation.
I wouldn't lay my life down for anybody, though.
No, not anybody, but certain people. I get that.
I would say there's people that, like, automatically there's going to be this base level of warmth,
Right.
Endearment, and just neighborliness I'll give to people. But,
Right.
like, if continually the person is, like, maybe like
Like an associate or something?
negative energy,
I see.
or
Okay.
just like. I
I
can't.
get
I
that.
can't just
well,
give
and
a
I think
gift
that's
to-
what
or
this
I
connected.
wouldn't
You
do
have
it.
to have a deep connection with that
Yes,
person to be willing to do that, and that's the thing
I
too.
would
Is it
lay
kind
that-
of goes in that same, if you're willing to do these things for these people because not on the whole, but subconsciously in the thing, we also want people to do these things for us. So that's, I do these things not because I expect things back, but because I also want there to be people there for me as well. You know what I mean? And I want to have that rapport with people and that trust with people that say you can lean on me and you can do these things. And I don't necessarily have to have known you my whole life to have that, but that's the type of thing that I also seek. I want these deep connections. And I think that's where that is, because deep connections doesn't necessarily mean I've known you my whole life, but I can also feel like I've known you my whole life. It's one of those
absolutely.
things. So
there are many people that I do meet like that maybe I haven't known them as long as Jonathan, but like
you still feel connected to them
the
and
vibe,
I get that. And that can be it too. You're even with strangers, you can be willing to help strangers and want to do for them, but that's the give and take. If they're going to just take from me, I'm also not going to want to do that anymore. I'm not going to,
I've heard somebody say, at the end of the day, we are all just strangers in a strange land. So,
that sounds familiar.
Right.
I think life is chaotic and mysterious and strange to everybody. So I think there's a certain level of sympathy and neighborliness that is just good to give.
Yeah. You do want to treat people how you want to be treated, even if they're not treating you the way
But
you want to be treated.
You can't let people abuse your
Right.
neighborliness.
You got to maintain your swag.
The next card we pull is the Four of Wands. Whenever we get this card, it's usually one of those, like, it's always a positive outcome. There's always a celebration to be had. So a lot of times, especially when we can look at this as a whole, if we're taking the time to celebrate ourselves and do the things for us when we're okay in our solitude and where we're okay with helping complete strangers or, our best friend, we're always doing it out of the goodness of our heart. So we're always willing to be in a place where we can celebrate afterwards. And that doesn't always mean physically, but we can be good with our minds and our heart and our soul. I did something good for somebody. And it doesn't have to be boastful, or it doesn't have to be, like people, make all these reels where they're giving food to homeless people. And you should give food to homeless people, but you don't always have to record yourself doing it because it's for clout. Like, why record yourself doing it unless you're going to post it somewhere? And it's not like you can't, you have to, but it's one of those things. Do it because only you know. You know what I mean? Do it because you want to do it for your heart.
Do not your good works to be done by men, but
right.
I think Jesus says, but to be seen by your Father in heaven. And I do believe, like, there's like,
Go pray in secret in your closet.
it
Close the door.
doesn't matter, because karma does see the hearts and see see the person's intention.
And I think that's the thing, is when you're always doing it with yourself, you're always there to celebrate yourself, say, I did the good thing, and, I can continue on with myself in a way that, like I said, it's not boastful.
Do it out
or,
of love.
It's
you love that person, so you're doing a
Right.
loving thing towards them. It's not love isn't a performance.
right. It's something that you do because you feel called to do. You should do it because you want to do it, because you need to do it.
Yes.
Moving off into that, we pour that the Four
Saw her
Pentacles.
earlier.
Yep, that was the card you pulled up when we were sitting here. And so in this situation, we can get to somebody too. Sometimes touching the Hermit, we can get to situations where we do self-isolate out of negativity in ways, but it's not, to sit and wallow. I think the negativity in that sense is more so, if there's situations that are happening, I'm going to sit in them, I'm going to evaluate.
Reflect.
Yes. And I think that's one of these things that, I go into myself, and other people might see it as, I'm pulling away, or I'm, being recluse, or I'm not being where I need to be with other people, but I'm trying to just come back around to myself, because I don't want to necessarily, be away. I just want to find my center again, and I need to, do that. A lot of times when we get to the situation where we're not holding on to those negative things. We're, like you said, evaluating. We're moving through and we're letting go, but we do need that solitude to do that. Not everybody can, do that with everybody else around them, or, in a way that, associates with the hermit to say, well, you're just pulling yourself away from everybody and doing these things, and that's why you sit by yourself. It's not true.
I'm
but
a complicated man. I got a lot of reflecting.
It's one of those things. We do a lot of reflecting. Is more is what it seems like. A lot of things. Everything in our life, I think, is a moment to step back and say, well, what did I get from this? And not greedy. Like, what came out of this? What was the problem, solution? The outcome. All the things that had happened in this. And that's with every step we take, almost. And I wouldn't say necessarily literally, but almost everything you do, you have the situation in which you do that. So.
Reflect.
Yes.
Yes.
Moving over into that, we have the Knight of Pentacles. So the Pentacles are working. These are things that are like active in our lives. We're happening. We're doing. We've been working towards, or they're a constant thing. Okay. With another Knight, the Knights are always similar because they're knights. They're there to protect. They're there to be. But because they each have their own suit, they have, their own different meanings. When we get this, we have a lot of reflecting on, as we just said, actually, but a lot of reflecting on our duties. What is it that I should be doing? What am I supposed to be doing? What do I want to be doing? It's all these reflecting things. And then what is it that is the most outstanding thing for me to be doing? Where am I needed most? And that's where I will go. Because even though there are all these other things to be doing and all these other things I want to be doing, I need to do an order. I need to say 1, 2, 3 and go that way. Because otherwise I could get off in 6, 7, 9, 11, 12, 13. And that can happen really fast because, we're so willing to reflect and go back and say, well, I don't want to say go back as in redo, try to like correct the past, but go back to certain things and say, what can I do differently about this? And what can I change or make better in this situation? So if it does come up next time, or there's another, occurrence, that it can be different because I didn't like the way that connects to this, reflecting on our steps. What did I do? What did they do? What was the situation? And what can be better next time?
Well, and then that's a pivotal part of the reflection is, what did I do wrong?
Right.
Where can I take accountability for this? What role did I play in bringing about this bad situation?
Right.
Because that's just like, it's just like anything else.
Right.
It's just like with weightlifting, you only get better when you correct your form, when you got to, anything. Like with Jonathan, talk about the songs that aren't of his standard. It's, you got to do the process, you got to, and that involves, you can't have this view of yourself that I'm wonderful. There's nothing,
Right. There's never, we're always a work in progress. We're always learning and growing. And I think that that's a good, when we reflect on that and say my situation and what I did or what I didn't do or what could have been different, and then apply that.
Though it might sound maybe a bit harsh, I think you'll get much further in life if you're more critical of yourself than other people,
Mm-hmm. I think that that's reflected in that too, because we can look at and say, I need to take that time. That's part of my process. That's part, it's evident in what I'm saying in the cards too. It happens a lot. Everything I do, I need to take that time and say, what was the process? How did it outcome? And if something, like I said, happens again or different or what, and that goes back to this Knight because he's always going to be there and doing these types of things. He's always going to be reflecting on the situation and then improving for the next time. So in the next one, we have this 5 of Cups. And we move that because we have this diagonal of cups where we come back to this. But for this, to explain the 5 of Cups, we have a situation a lot of times where we can associate it with regret or, we can associate it with things that we wish we would have done differently. Especially if we're somebody who is big on reflecting things, we can look back, in our past and say, this was a time when I wasn't, honoring myself and the people around me. And so I can say I didn't make the right choices, and I can look back and, especially touching this Knight and say, there are people who I might have hurt who I've known for a long time and might have hurt myself in that process, or those people around me that I wish I would have done things differently. Wishing can only do so much, really nothing in that sense of, a wish starts as, a hope or a want. And if you apply the difference to that, you can reflect and say, I've looked at these things that I've done wrong. I've said, I've, repented or whatever I needed to do. And I've made these changes so that this will never happen again, or I will do things differently. And we can say, I'm always going to have a situation, not always, because I don't want to sound doomful or something, but there will always be a situation in which I might not make the right choice. And then I will need to reflect and change and alter so that that never happens again, because I can only do as I learn, and I can know what's better for me, and I can, pick the right choice or the obvious right choice, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there won't be some sort of time when I reflect and say, what could I have done differently? I wish I would have done something differently. I wish that wouldn't have happened at all, or whatever else. And, these are all parts of our building blocks in which even the worst things that happen to us, like I said, I would never say something happens for a reason, but they happen because, the choices made by us or the people around us. And then we have to decide or make our own choices. Do we, continue forward with this? Do we change everything? Do we, forgive, forget? Do we let go? Do we build and continue? And that's even letting go with ourselves. We have to be able to accept the apologies of the people that we hurt, including ourselves. We have to say, you did do this and it was part of who you are. We reflected, we've changed, we don't do it anymore. But it definitely was, a strand, a block on your path, whatever it might be, that taught us something, whether it be good or bad, whether it be, something that we utilize today or not. We still had to go through it because of the choices made around it. And that can go back to, we might reflect every once in a while, even on those poor things that we did and say, gosh darn it, I still wish I didn't do that. But we're in such a better place now that there's almost no need for that. You don't have to reflect so hardly on the harsh parts of yourself, especially if you're willing to forgive yourself for those things. Yeah. Because, we can say, you've forgiven me, I've done better, I've whatever, or, but if we aren't doing that with ourselves, it's always going to be there. Not with loved ones, parents, friends, anything,
We were talking about this before we started recording the podcast. We were talking about this would be a cool thing to do a episode on in and of itself, pantheism, and the idea of like the universe being alive or everything, or us, we're the universe experiencing itself on a subjective level. And one idea that was put out there that I brought up is that reality, the universe, is a cruel teacher. It's full of chaos, full of pain, full of suffering, but the point of it all is to teach you something if you are willing to be the student and willing to learn from it, and I don't know. I just think that's a important, even if life is just totally random. I think it's important to view life in that way, is that it is a cruel teacher. The bullshit is cyclical. That's something that I just found to be a pivotal part of traversing through life is you never solve a problem for it never to raise its head again, but you anticipate it happening again, and that's how you get better. If you're trying to be a better person, a better man, you're constantly going to wrestle with your demons, but you see them coming. You get, ready to have a wrestling match. So
And I think that's part of that's reflecting. That's making sure, even if it were to never come up again, now I know what choices to make or what things to do or how to make it different. And I think that's kind of where we come back to that reflecting is we can definitely look on our past situations. We don't want to dwell on our past situations because then we can never, let go and move forward truly from them. Because even if we're anticipating them again, or not them specifically, whatever it might be, but something similar or who knows what, especially if it's certain people in your life that, you want to build these connections with or people you want to get close to or, have broken or lost things with and want to regain those things with because of certain situations, you have to also be willing to say, I did do these things and then I let it go. Because even if it never happens again, I can say, I've moved forward and I'm a better person, even if these terrible things did happen to me. Because it sucks, but there are lessons in everything. And I think that's the part is where I don't like to say everything happens for a reason, but I do agree that everything you can learn from.
Regardless of it I believe it. Lately, I've been believing that it does. I do believe in purpose, but regardless or not, I think it's helpful to view life as a cruel teacher.
I think that there's a lesson in everything, in every activity, and even things that people seem to be mundane or normal or average, and there's things in that too that can teach you and help you grow just personally, in the world. So I do agree with that. I feel like there's one more card to be pulled.
All right.
Which is the Hierophant. So on this opposite scale too, we got that, we're always growing and learning. That's one of those things we come back to. If we're, we want to be one of those people that people come to us, they want to know, they want to, talk with us, they want to have that conversation because you have things to teach people, even if you don't necessarily feel like you do or that they're an obvious thing. Even by having these random conversations with people walk away and they feel like they've taken something from it just as you do. And I think that's what's important about your part of the Hierophant here is that even if you're not actively seeking to teach people certain things or do certain things, even with this podcast, you're putting out information, you're, helping people learn, and even when you have conversations, the most random conversations with people, you learn things and they learn things and it grows from that. So I think that's where we are connected to that is even if, we make all these general connections, as many general connections that you make, you'll find those deeper connections in that because you'll find people that you spark with and you'll find people that you can build community with and build up around you that will support you. And I'm not saying it's just a bunch of yes men, but you want people who will be there for you. And that same way, that's more that deep connection communities. We're good to be by ourselves, but we still want these things to feel surrounded by the right people. And I think that the right people are drawn to you because of the things that you inadvertently have to tell them.
I had a dream one time, yeah, we'll call it a dream. I had a dream one time where I believe the dream, I saw what my purpose was in life. And ever since then, I've been interpreting it. It was a man rising out of the sea. Mm-hmm. His skin was purple and the water was it was nighttime. And he was rising out of the sea, building bridges. Mm. Yeah. And even knocking down certain walls to build bridges. And so I think there's a lot of ways that can go, but I think that's the person that I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, connectivity.
Is I'm supposed to build bridges. I
think that's true. All these connections. And
sometimes that bridge is a conversation.
Right.
Sometimes, I think I'm going to build bridges in a variety of ways.
Right. There's that difference. So you can sit at a table by yourself and have people walk up to you and start a conversation just the same as you can walk up to somebody and start a conversation just as easily. It's such a give and flow with you that it's, people say second nature, but really that's your first nature is to come up and be, inquisitive and want to talk to people.
Something that I want to help people with is their goals.
Right. And I think that's part of that too. You keep developing
Jonathan, that's something that's very if I could help somebody reach their goal or reach, a certain, just get past something they're trying to get past, that would mean the world to me.
Right.
And this is another way of building a bridge for somebody, helping them get to one spot.
Right. And giving them whatever they need from you to get to where they need to be while not giving away so much of yourself that you're not yourself anymore. So
building a bridge for somebody or for people, to me, seems like a very fulfilling work to do here.
I think so.
Yeah.
There you have it.
Did you take a picture of that? All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming on today. Thank you for coming on today. I love this.
That's a great way, I think, to wrap up that episode.
Absolutely.
Because it's about that time. Probably at an hour 15 or so.
Hour 26.
Oh, man.
It's usually Jonathan says the time, but not today. Thank you for coming on our show today.
Yeah, it was nice. Thank you for having me.
That was a lot of fun to talk about.
Do you want people to find you or to reach out for tarot card readings? Or
I suppose they could, but I don't really have any platforms. It's just really, the only social media that I have is really Facebook. So, so I suppose I'm a bit of a recluse myself. You know what I mean?
All right. Well, come out here to Michigan and visit in person.
Yep.
I'm always down, and you can always message me. I guess we can go from there. But.
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming on the show today, and thank you for sharing the art of tarot interpretation with us.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for taking your time and coming out here. That was a lot of information, and you know your stuff too.
I think both, and we're not gassing her up. We both resonated pretty thoroughly with me and Jonathan.
Right. Really? I'm glad I was able to come in and talk about it all and then let you actually experience it. So, like I said too, everybody will be different. You'll go to somebody and they'll do it differently than me because either they'll do spreads or they won't. I'm intuitive flow, so this is, I literally lay the cards down and tell you how I feel they connect and what it means. And other people will be very, blanket. This is what it is. That's, there's nothing beyond that. Or some people might be completely out, in a ball field because that's how they read. So it'll be different. And I encourage you to go to other tarot readers because, you know what I mean?
So folks out there, fellow strangers.
Yeah.
Find your local tarot card reading, especially fellas. Come on.
You want to be masculine, don't you?
Right.
Yeah, you want to be a tough guy, don't you? Go get your freaking tarot card reading.
Right.
But until next time, let's keep traversing this strange world with curiosity,
inquisitiveness,
and a little bit of
swag sprinkled into.
Yes. And let's remember to be neighborly to folks, because at the end of the day, we're all just strangers in a strange
land.
Freaking land. Yeah.
Strange freaking land.
Yeah. So until next time, peace.